Good, it's 7.
All right, welcome. This is the School District of Prescott's Board of Education regular meeting. We were in closed session since 6:15. We are now on item E, Pledge of Allegiance. Tony, would you care to lead us?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Move to item F, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to be recognized at this time? Jim, you want to take a, can either come up here, or there's no microphone there, so it has to be here, yep.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, you want me to put my mask on while I address the board?
If you can, yes, that'd be great.
I'd like to address good evening. I'd like to address the board tonight on item H3 and I1.
And Jim, we're going to just check to make sure it's on too. Yep. All right, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, just lean in just a little bit more.
Okay. I've been coming to board meetings now pretty much regularly for the last 20 years. And I gotta say that, you know, my experience, this administration and this school board seems to be the least transparent of any board that I have observed. And I say that with regret. You seem to have learned nothing from the debacle last year of selling the middle school. It was a bomb in the paper, it went over on a bomb in the community, and it was a bomb. At the annual meeting last week, for the first time we heard from SDS Architects, Pathway 1 and Pathway 2. I assume they might be in the paper this week. Turning the current middle school into administrative building, that's pretty big news. Putting all 5 grades as Pathway 1 into the current intermediate school, that's big news. No community involvement, no community input. Looking back at the minutes of the meetings and that, nothing in the minutes, nothing on the website about it. There's still nothing. SDS Architects' presentation is not on the annual meeting list of things for that meeting. There's minutes there, there's a Baird's presentation. SDS Architects are absent. Barely 6 years ago, we moved into this building. Spent a total of 30-some million, 33 million, 32 million. At that time, we were told in literature and at meetings that the district is pretty much set for the next 20 years. Now it comes out at the last annual meeting that we need, for all 3 buildings, not including this building, perhaps $14.6 million worth of maintenance. That's a big sum. That's a big sum for the community first to read about in the paper. It's a big sum for the board and the administration not to discuss with the public beforehand and build some buy-in. The purpose of the survey, from what I understand at the annual meeting, is to find out the public's tax tolerance. That was all that was mentioned. We did not mention anything about if any of these things, any proposals are good ideas or bad ideas or will be supported by the public. I do not know what it's going to be in that survey. I have not seen the survey. I know it's going to be approved tonight. You guys can do a much better job. Your job so far, as far as I'm concerned, sucks. I understand things change, but you can't just move 5 grades into the intermediate school without good explanation. When there were 4 grades in there before, it was overcrowded, and we built this school. I wish one of you, or more than one, would push for some involvement from the public and some information to the public. There's been one newsletter on the website this year, one newsletter. There's been no articles in the paper about what you're doing at all. It's all like a big secret. I guess it's the attitude is we know best, and have public be damned. They'll either support us or they won't. I think that's a poor attitude. I do not think it builds public confidence or public trust. I hope that you improve in the future. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else in the audience who would care to be recognized? All right, let's move on to item G, good news from around the district.
Yes, good evening, and I want to welcome our community and also our student rep, Maddie Tabayan, thank you. And Maddie joins us, and we're very pleased to have a student with us. We haven't had a student on the board since March when we had to go virtual, so we're very excited to have her here. Just a couple things. I'm going to turn it over to Maddie Tabayan to give an update from the Student Council, and then we'll go through good news from our administrative staff so far in the month of September. So Maddie.
Hello, is this on?
No.
Okay. Hello, like you said, I'm Maddie Tabayan, and we've only had one student council meeting as school has been in session, but we had 3 summit meetings during the summer. I believe that 3 students came to a teacher or staff meeting to talk about some of the things we discussed at the summit meeting, which included a Zoom call with some organizations around the River Falls and Prescott area regarding inclusivity. And we have taken that into consideration and incorporated that into our mission statement and goals. So in our previous meeting, we approved of our mission statement and goals, and our mission statement is, the mission of the Prescott High School Student Council is to be a student-centered organization that links students with administration, responsibly represents the student body, and promotes an environment of acceptance, unity, and equality. And also at this meeting, we elected our officers. Our president is Isabella Lenz, our vice president is Sophia Labakin, and our secretary is Anna Tomley.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your input throughout the meeting and in the meetings to come. I just wanted to give a couple updates with regards to the notice that came out from the emergency announcement from our governor, and that is that face coverings are going to be extended through November 21st. Not a big issue within our schools, as we are currently, all staff and students are using face coverings even in transportation, and have plans to continue that. In addition, I just wanted to thank the opportunity to work over at the middle school, and I was the artist in residence and got to teach 6th and 8th grade today. What they did is set up an escape room, and I wanted to just thank Ann Cressley for setting up that activity, and Josh Figge was able to run that up at the high school. So we are both resident experts or your artists in residency. And I'm going to turn over to Mr. Figge, and I have just a note for you that you're supposed to take on the theme of escape rooms that you can read after me.
I'm not supposed to read this up here, correct?
Correct.
All right. Josh Figge, Prescott High School. Obviously a very topsy-turvy start to the year with global pandemic going on. Good news from the high school, there's a lot. Just to highlight a couple of quick things. Number one, a huge congratulations to Jeff Ryan. We reported before that he was selected to be one of the 50 Teachers of the Year for History by the Gilder Lehrman Institute. He is now one of the final 12 in the nation. for that award. So that's a huge honor for him. And I'm starting to believe that maybe he can be our #1 in the nation. That would be phenomenal. And then just a huge thank you and a shout out to our staff and our students for their flexibility, for changing the way that they do things and creating a new normal. Up here, our staff for adopting new technology, new ways of teaching content for our students, learning new ways to learn and new skills. Every day we're finding new really cool things. You probably saw the piano out in the lobby. That's typically in the middle of the courtyard, and that's where our choir is now performing and practicing daily outside with distanced. Mr. Barch and Mr. Hansen today set up a par 3 golf course out on the back practice football fields, and so they're teaching kids golf on campus here and physically distancing kids. So just a lot of really amazing things happening here under difficult circumstances. So thank you to staff and thank you to students.
Thank you very much. At our middle school, Mr. Igo. If you guys want to just queue up behind.
Kyle Igo, Prescott Middle School. And again, I would like to start off by giving our teachers a quick shout out for everything they have done as well as our students. I started our first virtual day with a staff meeting on Monday, and I told them that we are currently rewriting the way the history books for the way that education is going to be held for our foreseeable future potentially, and that we should be excited and embrace it. And our staff has done a wonderful job of embracing it, and the students have really done a nice job of jumping on board, working hard, and doing those same things of embracing our new ways of instruction, new ways of learning. I'd also like to give a quick congratulations to Ann Cressley, our middle school and high school art teacher. She has been selected by Infinite Campus, our student information system, but she has been selected by Infinite Campus and to be one of their super teachers. What a super teacher is they're someone that influences the development and enhancement of new tools, current tools. She is one of 12 teachers in the nation to be selected by Infinite Campus to do this because of how much she uses Infinite Campus, the tools that she uses in there. She is a really heavy user and she does a lot of things and tries a lot of things. So congratulations to Ms. Cressley for being selected by Infinite Campus.
Great news about our teachers.
Sarah Dusick, principal at Malone Elementary. I just want to piggyback off of what Josh said about the staff and students and all of their flexibility this year. I think we're on our 4th week of school, and I've reworked our calendars and our schedules about 4 times. And it's impacted everybody from our aides to our classroom teachers to our students. And everybody's just been flexible and accepting that as that's what this year is. So it's been pretty amazing that way. On the school front, we have completed our first round of assessments using FastBridge. It takes an army of people in an elementary building to complete those assessments. There's a lot of 1-minute reads and 1-minute times on letter fluency and fact fluency and stuff like that. So I want to thank our instructional assistants for helping with that. We couldn't have done it without them. And then also staff and students are adjusting to our new instructional platform of Seesaw. We're using that in the classrooms, and it's also the platform that we're using to help deliver instruction and pass out materials to our off-campus students as well. And that's been a huge help and will help with the transition if we ever end up going completely virtual, which we hope we don't ever have to.
Michael Kosmalski, Malone Intermediate. I'll just say ditto to Ms. Dusick, since she took everything that was on the list. But in all honesty, just the amount of flexibility of our staff, our students, and our parents. We've been doing a phenomenal job of wearing masks, working on distancing, and keeping our kids safe. And I just can't echo enough that partnership between home and school with all the changes that we've had in terms of our transportation and all of our processes. It took a few days, but we're really smooth operating now. And just a big kudos to our staff who are not only teaching the students that are in front of us, but then they're also online teachers. And over their lunch period and after school, they're providing live virtual lessons for those families that have chose that option. And then we're still through our new Seesaw portal, delivering high-quality instruction. So kudos to the staff and to our families.
Thank you, Michael. Mark Inouye with Special Services.
Good evening. I'm excited to announce last month we were informed that we were awarded a $43,000 grant from the Department of Public Instruction for transition readiness. So this grant is going to help support some of our services for some of our senior students and students maybe in a 5th year who are really working to enhance some work skills. And we're partnering with the school district of River Falls and an organization called Project Search that works out of the River Falls Hospital. So this is a way for students to really get some real-world work experience and really enhance just their transition from kind of our environment into the adult workforce. And we're really excited about some of the new and exciting things that we're doing through that program. So.
And Mark, I just wanted to echo the work that you and Mr. Kozmowski did at submitting that grant. It was submitted at the end of the year, which was obviously unprecedented way of how we were navigating the end. You got that grant in, and it will assist our special education students as they kind of transition into after high school programming and into being active participants and citizens in our community. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Hello. First off, I want to thank all of you on the board for all the work that you do. I feel that's good news having you on the board, and a thankless job, and a lot of lumps come your way, but you take it in stride, and I think you have the best interest of the community and the school district in mind, so thank you. Other good news in terms of activities, our girls golf just got word from our coaches. They are conference champs, middle border conference champs. They won the meet today, the conference tournament, so they won the meet and then outright points for the year. So congrats to them and the coaching staff and everyone involved. State runners up last year as a team. They're going to look to hopefully take that next step this year and go from there as they hit playoffs. Other good news to share, as Mr. Figge alluded to, the par 3 golf course today. I was out there as Mr. Vorthrams and I, the ghost of cross country pass, came back and finishing up the course. First year we have this. The kids were hitting the golf balls more at us, I believe, than actually at the hole though. So. But the cross-country meet will be home tomorrow on our brand new course here on the high school campus, so we're very excited for the team and that opportunity. They've been having a good season so far, and we're looking for a home meet and a home course advantage and going from there. So 4:30 start for that up here, brand new course, which a lot of people have put a lot of work into, so we're excited about that. Thank you very much.
All right, is that everyone? I think, Dr. Spikuza?
Correct.
Okay, let's move on to item H, school business. First item is the consent agenda. We have minutes, board bills, and personnel update inside the consent agenda. At this time, does the board have any items in the consent that they would like to pull out? If not, I'll adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? No objections. The consent agenda is adopted. Move to item 2, employment.
There are no new hires at this time.
All right. On to item 3, consider approval of the school perceptions community survey.
Yes, and at this time, we're going to be introducing a guest, Sue Peterson, with School Perceptions.
Mike, I'm sorry. Just a point of order. It does look like we have a resignation.
Okay, I don't, in the consent agenda we do, not in the,
We have no
Oh,
license.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
right, yep. Okay, so keep going.
Yep, so we have in the background, I believe we'll be switching over to our invited guest, Sue Peterson. Previously, the board had identified working with School Perceptions. At the time, we had looked at different survey questions to get input from our community. The difference in the model of a random sample that might identify 100 or 200 individual households, this model will cover 100% of all addresses within the Prescott School District. It will have information that will be coming out, and we'll show a timeline with that. And I'd like to turn it over to Sue to kind of walk us through the work that the board has done on 26 different iterations with regards to the survey. and then we'll talk about timelines, and then also how that information will come back to help the board make its final decisions as they look at the infrastructure report that was provided at the annual meeting in 2019, and then also given and updated throughout this year. Sue?
Good, I'm here. Good evening. Do you want me to share my screen, Rick, or just to talk?
First, we're going to have you try to talk a little bit louder. And let's max end. Okay, so if you could lean in and turn up your volume. At this time.
All right, am I better now?
You're awesome. All right.
Ooh,
So,
great.
Sue, if you want to just give us a little bit background quickly about school perceptions and then where we are. The board does have a copy of the final draft of the survey, and we will be determining whether or not they're ready to approve that, and then I can put up, or you may have, the survey timeline so the community can see how this goes out and when the information will be provided back to the board.
Certainly. Why don't you go ahead and put the timeline up on your screen since the board has the survey in front of them. I spent some time with you this summer when we went over a draft of the survey. And remember what we do. We've been doing this for more than 20 years across the country, spending a lot of time supporting school districts here in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois, North Dakota specifically. But our goal, like Rick said, is to land this 8-page paper survey in every residential mailbox within your school district. That survey has two purposes. One is to educate your community on those needs. So I heard earlier tonight some people saying, oh, we didn't know perhaps of some needs that the district had. So this is an opportunity for all of your citizens to become aware of the needs and the work that you as educational experts have done to identify what it is that the school needs. We also then, you know that you had engaged with SDS and that they had gone through your buildings. They've created some formal reports. Those reports do live on your website. We did indeed link or place a link on page 3 or page 4 of the survey where we want folks to know that if they want to read those, so from a transparency standpoint, we wanted to make sure that that information was all out there for your citizens. But we let them know that you've really identified in your building some safety and security needs, that you've got some aging infrastructure, not in that high school, but in some of those other buildings that are older, and that there's some instructional needs, some educational spaces that need updating, as well as an opportunity to optimize the spaces that you have, that you may have some underutilized space. And so then we really, our work with the district was, we said you really had two pathways, that the board and the district, as you make an investment in your schools, you really have a choice that you could continue to operate 4 schools in those 4 buildings. And we knew that it was important to the community to continue operating and maintaining 4 schools. But another option was that pathway 2. So you'd maintain all 4 of those buildings, but you'd instructionally use 3 of them for school. So we've outlined for your citizens really those needs in those 3 buildings, so things that would be done whichever pathway people choose. So your citizens will really be able to learn about those needs, the costs associated. They'll be able to weigh in on which pathway, if either, that they prefer. So should we operate those 4 schools? Should we operate 3 schools, and that 4th building, that middle school, be used for district office and community programming? And then in addition to which direction or which pathway, how much money are you willing, if any, to support in a tax increase for the district to address their identified needs? So this survey is going to land in a couple weeks. So if you approve it tonight, we'll begin the printing process tomorrow morning. So about 2 weeks from now, it would land in those mailboxes. A survey will be out for about 3 weeks. And then on November 19th, I would be with you live in person, hopefully, and I would be able to look at the data with you, and I'll be able to talk about the different subsets of your community and their thoughts on the proposed projects, and if they do agree that these are needs and needs that they're willing to financially support. And once we have that information, then I can provide some guidance on next steps as far as does it make sense, is now the time to move forward with a referendum or multiple referendum questions. So that's really the work, and I think Rick's got the timeline up there. As a board, you've seen multiple drafts, you've provided feedback, and we've made those adjustments. And so again, after tonight, if you give us the green light, we'll move on to that next step in the process.
Thank you, Sue.
So at this time, do we want to ask any feedback or comments for Sue? Is that where we want to go with this? So I'll just go around the board here. Steve, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I really don't. We've looked at this for about 250 versions now, so I think this team's done a great job putting this survey together. It is a way for us to reach out to the community and get input, which is the point. So I'm really looking forward to getting the data back and see where we are. I also appreciate the fact that we're not just talking about the schools. We've got some other questions in there relative to the district, but I don't have any questions for the survey. I think it's looking pretty darn good.
Vicki?
No questions about the survey. Yeah, no.
All right. Yeah, questions or comments, Tanya?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that, we have talked about this repeatedly, and so I'm really familiar with it. On April 2nd, we had a board workshop where SDS presented to us. We talked about all that kind of information in a public meeting. August 11th, we had a workshop where we had our survey company came and talked to us and walked us through a public meeting. August 19th, we talked about it again at our board meeting, and so I feel really confident that this is something that we've talked about multiple times, we've looked at multiple times, and I'm ready to get the feedback from the community. What I really like about this survey was it's not just a survey. We vetted out a couple different places at one of our board meetings, and we chose this one because it had the option to educate the whole entire community. Even though that might be additional costs or it might be more mailing, it was really important and valuable for us to get the feedback from our community. And so I'm looking forward to that feedback so we can make decisions about next steps, as those decisions have not been made yet.
Pat?
Tanya and Steve said it very well. Thank you. I have no additional questions or comments.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple. So when we started this process a while ago, and then we got to the point where we were picking a vendor to do the survey, school perceptions really stood out. And credit to you, Sue, because in previous surveys that we've done, we did the scientific survey where I think we cast it out to, I think it was 300 people, a couple different surveys that we did, and it worked. It got great results, and we got good data from it. When we were discussing the option of school perceptions, this one, given the time that we're in now with COVID, it just seemed a really great way to get out all the information of what we're up against, what our needs are, and just our vision of a long-range master plan that we have been working on since we brought in SDS architects to kind of help us evaluate our buildings, and to put that all in an 8-page mailer for the community, for the entire community to actually go through and hopefully read. And hit on the major needs that we're looking at. This survey is I think we're on version 26, so it's very well articulated. I think it's an informative piece, and we hope that we get a good response from the community so we can make decisions based on that community feedback. This is a community. This is the opportunity for the community to get educated and understand the master planning that we've been working on here for over a year, close to 18 months. So Sue, I really have appreciated your hard work and your input throughout the whole process. And I'm really excited to get this thing out the door so people can get it in their mailboxes and take a look at it. Let's see here. Anything else? Anybody else have any comments before we make a motion here?
I'll move to approve. Are we ready, Mike? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we're ready. Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the school perceptions community survey to be distributed.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion that we want to have on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Is
Great,
she
we'll
still
get
on?
to work. All right.
Thank you.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Let's move on to item 4. Consider resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $29,500,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
Yes, so we're going to have our finance coordinator, Renee Peterson. You saw her last week at our annual meeting. You are going to have her cover the next 2 items. Lately, every time she's been coming to a school board regular meeting, she's been saving you and our taxpayers a lot of money. So I'm going to turn it over to her to tell us a story about refinancing and the process that would go with that.
All right, so we've been contacted by our bond agent, Baird, and they are proposing that we refinance up to the, do you have the slide, 2.9 million?
29
million? Yeah, up to 29 million. The reason why we say up to 29 million is because the interest rates are fluctuating. Some of the bonds might not be able to be refinanced due to wherever we're sitting at the time for each bond. So we're looking at the 3 bonds. It's a 2012 bond, 2014, and 2015. The 14 and the 15 bond are both the high school, and total savings that we're looking at over the next 13 years, 14 years, is right around $687,000. This savings is taxpayer direct savings. It's not district savings. It would go directly savings to our to the public.
And can I just bring up for you, Renee, there's 2 kind of motivating factors about the refinancing, and that has to do with the chart about where rates are for interest. Do you want to just walk us through this and where they've been for the last 12 months?
Yes, so Baird presented this last week, showed us where the rates were and where they are currently. They are currently still going up and down, but you can see the spike from COVID. It went back up, and now it is back down below where the current bonds are. So they have this certain percentage that they kind of want to look at, and anything that goes below that is when they start looking at refinancing bonds. And all 3 of these bonds would hit that lower, below that percentage. So these 3 would be eligible for refinancing.
So just to clarify, we're talking about all 3 bonds that we're looking at refinancing, not just the 2.
Nope, right now we're looking at all 3. They may drop off one of them depending on the interest rate.
Okay.
So that's why the resolution is for up to the 29 million, because they might drop off one of them. And actually, I think one of them is the 2015. The one that they're looking to drop off is the 2015, and that's just because the interest rate in the end is high, but I think the interest rate currently is low. So you get a lower interest rate the first couple of years, and then it gets higher. So in overall, it's that 3rd column from the end. They want to see that savings amount above 2%.
Yeah. Okay.
So Renee, just a couple things. This is a two-step process. So you want to explain the resolution being approved tonight doesn't guarantee it's refinanced, but it sets the stage for it?
Yes, so the resolution tonight gives us the authorization to proceed with the refinancing. So you authorize Baird and myself to start looking at the refinancing. They draft up documents and start looking at our bond rating. So we went through our bond rating back in 2017, I believe, end of 2017, beginning 18, when we did the energy efficiency. So they'll redo our bond rating to see where we're at, and that is based on our financials and liabilities, assets. So they'll go through all that. They'll meet with us, and then in the end, they are watching and locking in those rates to see what is the best rate for us. So at the time when they get to those rates where they're at, is when they will see, that 2015 is only at that 0.77. If that drops any more, they may not refinance that, just because there are fees for refinancing, just like in your personal life there is fees for refinancing. If that drops any lower, that bond might not be worth refinancing.
Steve, any questions?
No.
Vicki?
No.
Tanya?
I don't. We talked a lot about this at the public annual meeting, so I'm pretty aware of it.
And Pat?
No questions.
Okay, so tonight we would approve moving forward to work with Baird, basically. And if we lock in, does this come back to the board for anything else, or will we just lock in and then sign, and then?
There would be, basically there would be a report that would come to you to sign off the final papers of the final approved resolution for the refinance, as long as it meets these parameters. So if none of the parameters are met, then nothing changes.
This just allows us to get out of your way, right?
Or gives us authority to move forward.
Gives us authority to move forward.
Right.
You and I think Pat would have
As the
to
clerk,
sign any final documents. So it's just the process to move forward.
Okay.
Nothing can be finalized without the president and the clerk's signature, I believe.
Sounds great. We got big savings here, so it's very exciting. Maddie, sorry I didn't call you in the last one. Do you have any questions on this one? Okay. I got to get used to this again. It's been a while. All right. We'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve a resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $29,500,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
I'll
Second.
She got you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item 5, consider short-term loan to meet financial obligations.
All right, this is just a formality for me to start working with First National Bank. We've had our short-term loan. We call it a short-term loan. They call it a line of credit. We've had that open for a number of years. I don't even know how long. But we haven't had to actually use or borrow from the line of credit the last couple of years. In talking with our auditors, I asked if we should not take it out. They did not recommend us to not have one. They said you never know, just with COVID. The COVID could have, it went to the county. The county could have held on to our 1920 final tax payment. They could have held on to that for, I believe it was another month or 2 months. And the county decided not to, but at that time, if they would have held on to that, we probably wouldn't have had funds throughout the summer. When it came time to the first payroll, September, October, just the way that as Rick and I explain it, the train of money that comes in, we're constantly relying on state and federal and local money to fund our payrolls, and any of these natural disasters or crises can cause us to have a delay in our money coming in. So this year was a good year as an example of you never know what could happen, and we had that line of credit there that we could have used at any time. All this allows me to do is to start working with First National. Again, Mike and Pat would sign all the actual documents once we get the final paperwork. The initial interest rate at this time, they're quoting us the same as it has been in the past, which is 4.25%. And we will take out that line of credit for the $1 million as a safe net for if we have any blocks in the road for our state and local money that does not come in, if it does not come in.
Tanya, any questions?
Nope, again, we talked about this at the annual meeting, and this is something we do every year, so I'm pretty familiar with it especially this year, as just in case kind of thing.
Pat?
No questions.
Steve?
Tanya took my comments.
Vicky?
No questions.
And it's been 2-3 years now since we've actually tapped into the line of credit,
Yep, we have not taken it the last 2 years.
and our fund balance is getting stronger and stronger, so this is just a safety net.
Yes.
So, all right, thank you. We can move for a motion here.
I'll move to accept the line of credit at First National Bank for $1 million at 4.25%, no origination fee, and the first draw, dollar amount to be determined on a line of credit for short-term borrowing.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. On item 6, consider amending proposed county and district metric presented at August 19, 2020 board meeting.
Yes, actually, I'm going to put up the wrong tab, and then we're going to have my two secondary principals join us at the podium. As everybody understands, we have already pivoted on the 14th and now on the 21st of September for secondary students, 6 through 12, where on Mondays we have a virtual day where they're working with their assigned teachers and coursework to kind of lay out the week. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, 50% of our secondary students are on site and 50% are working at home. Then on Thursday and Friday, we flip-flop that, and we call them the red group and the blue group. As you know, we had set and put forward in August our own kind of metric or matrix with regards to when we would make decisions on having to shift to hybrid and potentially off-campus. The reason that we had to, as a district, to put that forward is that unfortunately at the Wisconsin Department of Health, they were promising to put something out, but that never materialized. In the absence of having a metric, we looked at what was out there across the country, also what our neighboring state, Minnesota, was putting forward, and we adopted our plans. At that time, we had a y-axis. It talked a little bit about student and staff absenteeism, and we looked at low, moderate, and high. As you know, with the schools reopening in Pierce County, and including the University of River Falls, I am showing you the current data with regards to the number of cases that are confirmed or probable. They have skyrocketed to over 200 cases for the beginning of the week of 9/19. Pierce County and their group of contact tracers have been doing an admirable job, have been outstanding with the work of our nurses and coaching us through making decisions. Their tipping point, however, within the county was that if there ever was a point where there were 350 confirmed cases in 14 days, they would be at crisis mode, meaning that they no longer would be able to do the contact tracing required to identify who needed to isolate, who needed to quarantine, and sometimes that would put the greater community at risk. Given that, we also learned internally that sometimes within the county, the spread or the incident rate skyrockets, but a lot of that right now has to do more with the University of River Falls and the college age students that opened up. I want to be clear, we are not immune to the COVID virus. We have had incidences and cases that have tested positive among our faculty, among our students, and also some family members. So it's not as if it hasn't penetrated our district. That said, the number of cases is much less and obviously has been manageable, with the exception at the high school and middle school level that is very common across the state and nation, with just the frequency of how adolescents socialize and also the mobility that they have in either extracurricular or ability to drive. So the reason that we're coming back to you is we wanted to make sure that the cases that are happening at University of River Falls that has created a shelter in place for the next 14 days does impact sometimes either our families or our students. We do have student teachers that are enrolled at the University of River Falls. We do have other employees as aides that work, and also some of our families have UW River Falls students living at home. So there is sometimes the ability for crossover. Given that, we realized that we wanted to come back and share with you a potential amendment with regards to how we would make that decision. So you all were provided that in your packets. I'm going to cast that so the community can see it and explain to you how it would be more in parallel with how we make decisions just in time based on sometimes the weather or snow days. It's obviously the timing that matters when we hear the information. It's the amount of inches or snow that will accumulate. It's the wind speeds and obviously wind chill. It's the confluence of those variables that help make the decision. So what we're going to do is have both of our principals come up, share a little bit of where we currently are with regards to the burden rate, and then what has changed on this proposal from the one that happened in August. So, Mr. Figge?
Tell Renee Peterson was up here before me. Sorry, Renee. Yeah, thank you. So now that we're in our 4th week of school, different than our last meeting where we had approved this metric, we've essentially lived now through 3 full weeks of contact tracing, seeing what our school looks like, and then there are a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, during that time, we've shifted from 100% of students on site, face-to-face, 5 days a week, to at the secondary level now, a hybrid model. The high school shifted into the hybrid due to internal factors, and the middle school shifted due to county and some external factors with the blend of internal factors. And so what we're finding is that when we were planning for this, we were using very heavily or borrowing very heavily from Minnesota's model. And while it's very nice to have that on paper, there are a lot of nuances that are specific to district that have to be worked out on a daily basis. So what you're going to see different about our metric now is that in our minimal internal school absenteeism row up top, under the 30+ cases for county burden, that previously was a red square or red cell, meaning all students were off campus. One of the things that we've done now is we've changed that to a hybrid learning model. And here's why. What we're finding right now is our internal factors impact us, obviously, in a far greater way than the external factors. And right now, one of the reasons why the burden rate is what it is, and today when they released it, it was at 24, so we were still under that 30+ cases. But one of the reasons it doubled in the past week, what we're getting from health professionals, is due to a large cluster occurring on UW River Falls campus. As Dr. Spikuza stated, that does in some ways impact us, but with the middle school and high school in the hybrid model, what we've seen over the past 2 weeks at the high school and the past few days at the middle school is that we are able to maintain far more safety, or a much greater degree of safety than we previously thought we would be able to in terms of physical distancing, cohorting, de-densifying the building. That's in part because a number of our students have gone fully virtual. It's also because we've got a far greater ability to spread our students out classroom by classroom. That's one of the reasons why we believe that we could have minimal internal absenteeism for students and staff, and those external factors could rise above that 30 plus level, and we could still potentially stay hybrid. Once those things start to impact us within the community of Prescott directly or within our school district, that's where some of those nuanced decisions need to be made. But as of right now, what we're seeing is that the hybrid, it looks very promising for us, and so we're hopeful that that can be a longer model that will prevent us from having to go fully virtual at the secondary level.
So, any questions? Steve, do you have any questions for Josh?
Well, I guess a couple. So the district this week or late last week indicated that students were not going to be able to go completely virtual for the rest of the trimester, correct?
Correct.
And I certainly understand the continuity reasons for that and some of the other things that were described. But my question is, as a parent, and possibly speaking for other parents, you know, what happens if I see the county going up and I say, hey, I don't want my kid in that environment. I'm concerned that the school district may not be monitoring appropriately or whatever reason, right?
Correct.
What options do families have at that point?
I would hope that they would reach out to Mr. Igor or myself, Dr. Spikuza. We're taking things on a case-by-case basis. One of the things that's been difficult is obviously we've had students who have gone off-site for a day, on-site for a day, off-site for a day, on-site for a day. For our teachers to manage those things, for attendants to do the things that are mandated to us by the state, those things become very, very difficult with constantly fluctuating occurrences, I guess I'll say. We felt like the first 3 weeks we gave people a good indicator of what things were going to be like, and to the best of our ability, that was kind of tumultuous. So our hope is now, if people have an opinion of what should occur, either for their own child or for the district, that they're comfortable reaching out to either one of us. Obviously, those internal factors will come into play, but it's kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Well, understanding case-by-case basis is helpful at least. And Mr. Figge, I've got huge trust in your ability and the other administrators in this district to make decisions on what's going on in these buildings, because I'm not here daily. And I know we have a little ambiguity with some of the definitions, and that's intentional so that we have some flexibility. So just to be clear, my support is there. I just want to make sure that that parents understand that they can come to you with concerns. And
correct.
You know, I can't overemphasize that because there's a lot of people stressed out about this, as you know better than I do, working in the building. But that's all I had. Just wanted to ask that question and make that point.
And I just wanted to accent the point too that both Steve and Josh were making, is that any parent, if they want to be 100% off campus, that remains an option and will continue to meet those needs. So that is an option for anybody throughout the year.
Thank you.
Vicki.
I don't have any questions. I'm glad that it's working out better than you had expected. Yeah, I think it's great that we can keep kids here, and hopefully we can continue to keep moving forward. And yeah, it's better, I guess, that we control that situation versus, you know, if it's not happening here in our community directly, then yeah, I'd hate to see us have to send kids home because of something that's happening at the university. So, yeah, I think this is a good idea.
Pat?
I couldn't hear Steve and Vicki very well, so Mr. Figge, I apologize if I'm gonna
just fire away.
If I'm gonna go. So I think I understood Steve to just say that, hey, there's always an opportunity for parents, you know, to reach out if there's a concern, and we can find a path to success. I believe in an email that you guys put out this week, and just confirmed what you already said about you guys finding great success in maintaining that 6 foot plus distance during the hybrid model. And so that is working well, and you foresee that, you know, being a thing, hopefully positively moving forward. I know, as I'm sure you do, one of the concerns with if that wasn't able to be, you know, maintained, you know, kind of the seating chart, you know, or, you know, potential, you know, distance between people, it can also kind of send families, you know, kind of back and forth, and sometimes it was just worth saying we're just going to be 100% online until but it sounds like that's under control, and it's been a positive thing.
Yeah, and I do think it's worth noting that the greatest thing that our hybrid schedule allows us to do is cut in half the amount of students in the classroom. What we've told our teachers is we should have 6 feet at all times, whenever possible. If they can't do it in a classroom, come to one of us. We'll find a space for you to be able to do that during class. There are obviously some instances, lunch is one of those difficult times, and it's kind of a balancing act. We limit the amount of students to certain areas during lunch. There's a social emotional piece to school that we try and balance out, so we don't want kids to eat at a table alone. We want them to be able to, that's why I don't refer to it as social distancing anymore, I call it physical distancing. We want kids to still socialize and get support from one another. But we're at a place where we believe, if you've seen the contact tracing that occurred the first couple of weeks of school, we believe that would be minimal at most. There might be 0 students wrapped up in a contact trace if we did have a positive individual come into school. So those are all benefits to us. I do think it's worth noting, again, if a parent or a family is really concerned about being on site for safety reasons, a student's anxious about being there because of some of the things that are occurring in the community, I hope they feel comfortable coming to Mr. Igo, myself, Mr. Smith, Dr. Spacuzza, or any other administrator. One of the things we are seeing is some families trying to opt in for other reasons during the first 3 weeks. I would say we had about half of our students or families who opted in for reasons that weren't really COVID related. It was, they gave us other more convenient reasons, and those were things that we acquiesced to at the time. Those are the instances now that we're trying to work individually with families to say, every one of these things stresses the system for a family or a student who has a legitimate reason for this pandemic of why they would want to be off site. Technology would be one of them. I appreciate that you guys approved the one-to-one technology, but it hasn't come yet, and a lot of districts are far out. So we're giving out as much technology, hotspots, Chromebooks that we can, but every one that we give out for a student who opts off site stresses our system a little bit more. So that's where we're kind of getting to our tipping point. We just want to make sure that we're reaching those students who are truly anxious and scared to go off site. So that's kind of our first tier of how we make those decisions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tanya.
Well, of course, I have many questions, but I guess my first question, you mentioned the county, which is the metrics we're using, is burden rate is at 24. What is the Prescott School District burden rate at?
Oh,
I mean,
that's a great question, because the burden rate is calculated by 100,000 people, so I'm not sure we've...
Well, by 10,000, right, is what we're reporting on.
We do it by 10,000. Right. The metrics that come out from DHS are by 100,000.
I'm just wondering, because let's say we have, I mean, I guess one of my concerns is that, and I want my kids in school, so I just want to put that out there. Both of my kids go to the secondary level. They feel really confident. They feel really safe. I know that they're learning. So, I mean, by choice, I want them in school. And I like this hybrid model. I like how we're doing synchronous learning at the same time. I like all these things. But some of the reasons why I felt like we approved that in the first place was that we wanted to mitigate some of the risks to our staff and to our students. Right. That we wanted to put something out there that takes the pressure off of you as an administrator and Dr. Spacuzza as an administrator, that it's to get behind those politics, that this is what we have chosen. And we chose it based on science, and it might not have been Wisconsin science because they didn't give us that guidance, but it was chosen based off of science, right? There was a reason. And so if we are at a 0.24 burden rate, what that means for people in the audience is that's 24 out of 10,000 active positive cases in a 2-week period, or presumed because a family member is positive. And so if we had approximately 1,300 kids in our school system, which is probably pretty close,
Yep.
and we even had 10 cases, we're looking at a 0.8 burden rate, which is almost 3 times the one that we just approved. And that's a concern for me, I guess, because I think that there's reason why we chose that in the first place. And I don't want to get to a place of, I already feel like at least the first couple weeks of school, I don't know where we're at now, there was some of that inequity of who gets to be in school, who doesn't. We had classrooms out, programs done, large groups of students because of the quarantine piece of it too. So now we're not even testing positive, but we have lots of kids that to me impacts our burden rate. You know, I know that it's not a positive, but it's an equity access to their education. And I just don't want to see that continue. And so if you're saying this is working and those cases have dropped and it feels really good, awesome. But I am concerned about, like on this diagram, is like maybe we should define things like minimal and moderate a little bit better then. So that way it's not, okay, let's come back and it feels good again, so then the decision just keeps going back to you guys. And I'm a little concerned about that because you have a lot of decisions, and Rick, you brought up, which is a great analogy, snow days, and that's probably one of your most stressful decisions you make. And I just, part of this was to support you guys and to support our community, and so people knew ahead of time and could anticipate. And so I support this, as if you guys, I trust you guys, you're saying it's working, our numbers are going down, amount of kids quarantined. I hope our public and our families are complying with not sending their kids to school if they've been around kids that have tested positive. I hope that they're working with county health, because all of this system falls apart if those things aren't happening. And that pressure is back on you guys. So those are just my concerns, those are my thoughts. And I would just recommend, or at least have some dialogue about, what does it mean when minimal staff are gone now? Because minimal to me is like 1 or 2, right? What is moderate? And the burden rate being really a 0.8 if we had 10, and I'm throwing that out there. I have no idea publicly, you guys have no idea, but that's not a big number.
No.
And it's 3 times, almost 3 times what Minnesota's put out there in surrounding communities. So those are my concerns about it. Not a lot of questions, I guess.
And let me just use this as a bridge a little bit. I put up behind me, Pierce County on Monday has changed its model with regards to how it's going to provide guidance. The superintendents in Pierce County and our nurses were on a conference call with AZ Snyder. They are going to be, and you can see on the bottom left, is that they are using the Harvard Pathway to Zero metrics. The good news is that the model that we've adopted is very similar to the Harvard model. Ours might be a little even more conservative, but I think the piece when you talk about minimal, moderate, and significant really still comes down to whether or not, because teachers also are social and meet together, it could be that we have not just that our staff are either identified or isolated because they're close contact, but they socialize together. And it is possible that a whole grade level team of teachers go out. And we also know that every district across this country and in Wisconsin, we've always had substitute shortages. This year, it is dire. And so it's more likely that it's going to be internal concerns. And unfortunately, right now, the way that we've been dealing with it is we wanted to take away the 30 as the automatic, because I think it's highly probable we'll be at 30 cases at a burden rate next week. It's really going to be internally where we're going to have to make the decision, because we just don't have the capacity to carry out an effective day. The one thing that we also changed is on the bottom left of the new proposal is that the hybrid, when we made that shift, we guaranteed that it would be at minimum 15 academic days or 3 weeks. As you see, we've kind of pushed it out to organize it around the first trimester at the high school. If we have to go 100% virtual, it's likely to be in concert with our surrounding districts and also Pierce County Public Health. And so it's more of just giving us the latitude in those conversations where it's highly likely, but it would then be determined at the time based on the facts that we have of how long we're not going to say it's guaranteed that it's 3 weeks. It would be something that would be based on, in every circumstances we're finding, every time we throw out a hypothetical, COVID throws us a curveball. So that on the bottom left, that blue part is what is an additional change.
And that does bring up a question I had. It was even written down, but I forgot, which is physical distancing. I mean, is that something that we're practicing with our staff as well? Because that is the other concern. Our kids can practice it, but are we practicing that with our staff? Are we not having staff meetings in closed spaces? Are we keeping, and so those are things that I would just be really, equally worried about, because staff are really our population that's at risk to really get sick, to have something significant happen.
Correct. And that's one of the reasons why we've reduced, or in some cases shut down, staff lounges. Little things like treat Fridays are no longer a thing where there's donuts there. We do our staff meetings in this room. Obviously you can fit many people in here and maintain the physical distancing. So we're trying to model as much as we preach to students. And trying to keep our departments separate as much as possible and meeting virtually, so that we don't have an entire English department or grade level department that goes out at a single time. Right now what we're finding is the majority of our staff and students are going out because of community factors or community spread. So I guess my plea to community members would be to continue to practice the things that DHS, the CDC, Pierce County has espoused this entire time: physical distancing, mask wearing in the community, things like that, because those are things that directly impact us here on a day-to-day basis as well.
And I think that, Tanya, you had mentioned it earlier, it's kind of what our community can do and support us in those behavioral modifications is critical for us to remain open. And then also for our faculty, obviously, they adhere to the rules while they're here. We just need also, when they're off-site, to adhere to those similar rules. And so it is a both and. We continue to be mindful of it and remind people. And I would still stand by, I think the best educational model is on-site with highly qualified teachers face-to-face. But in this current environment, it's just not feasible at 6 through 12. One question I know a lot that might be in the back of everybody's mind is this continues to be focused on secondary. In talking with AZ in Pierce County, she is supportive and has not asked us to move in any other direction other than being on site and then focusing on the cohort model. However, does understand that we probably would not go from on-site 5 days a week to a hybrid at elementary and intermediate. It would be completely off campus. So that's kind of why you see the demarcation between 612 and our elementaries.
All right, so this was a lot of information for an agenda item. I just want to bring it back to, as an agenda item, there's a couple of different options here, and I think where we landed here is we have a couple options, and Rick, I don't know if you have a recommendation for us, but there's an option to actually approve the matrix as a board, and then there's another option to actually just delegate the superintendent to make that final decision, or we do nothing and just let you guys, move forward and continue doing what you're doing. Does that sum it up?
It does. The one thing, and I want to just make sure the wording is accurate, but with this amendment, either way, I think I would like that amendment to change that first row of making it hybrid if the burden rate is at 30. Okay. And whether or not then the final decision is delegated to me versus calling emergency meetings by the board.
Okay, so we did, you got to refresh my memory, we did vote on the matrix and approve that?
In the August meeting,
okay,
correct.
So
it was a business item.
We would want to change that, so we would want to make the amendment and make a vote on it. Okay.
Yeah.
So to be clear, if we're approving this, we're approving the adjustment to the diagram, and then it says, and the superintendent makes the final decision. But would that just, that's based off of the model that we approve, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I just wanted to make sure that you were, the way it's written, if you want to wordsmith it differently, but as you just said, by moving to delegate, you're also adopting this amendment.
Yeah, okay.
So if you want to clarify that, please do.
Okay, because I really do want to take some of that decision off of your guys' shoulders too. I mean, that's a lot. So, okay.
Does anybody want to try to make the motion?
I can. I move to adopt the decision matrix metric as presented and move to delegate the Prescott superintendent to make the final decision related to the programming model implemented using Pierce County burden rate in the decision matrix. What makes it the best? And best judgment based on weekly factors.
We have a motion. Any questions?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Is there any other comments or questions? Pat?
Yeah, Mike, I do. So we're moving to adopt this amendment.
Yep.
Okay? And then we're also, in addition, giving Dr. Spacuzza authority to deviate as necessary.
My understanding was we're adopting this and we're giving him permission to make the decision without having a special board meeting to make it.
So this becomes kind of a blueprint rather than an absolute. So because the y-axis is really going to be something about absenteeism, and it's highly likely that that'll be the factors that will tip us prior to anything that I can quantify for you.
Okay, thank you, understood.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. And again, I forgot to ask for your input, Maddie. I'm so sorry. This one is like the one that you probably care about the most. All right, we'll move to item 7. Consider a resolution for flexibility waiver to BPI.
Okay. Just wanted to remind everybody, we did have an annual meeting last week. At that time, we followed that annual meeting with a board session that was a one-item public hearing. No other business was taken. At the public hearing, we presented information that's been provided as options from our Department of Public Instruction at Wisconsin to seek waivers when we are unable to deliver based on our response to COVID. At this time, we had a listening session or a public hearing to address 4 very specific things. We are looking for a waiver on teacher certification and licensure requirements to teach in their licensed area. The food service delivery, we do have a requirement to deliver milk daily to all students, and obviously when students are only here at the secondary level 2 out of 5 days, that would be nearly impossible. We also wanted to identify that we would be reducing or stepping out of the obligation to meet all the instructional minutes within the day, and we also are finalizing the educator effectiveness piece. Now, I want to be clear, we are not therefore throwing in the towel. You have seen, and you have children in our district, we are still working with our students, both synchronous and asynchronous. Will continue throughout the year to provide public education. The reason for the licensure step out is that there are times where teachers might be working off campus, either because they're quarantined or in isolation, but with technology they can deliver to the classroom. They would be the teacher of record, but we would still have to have a chaperone in that room. And so technically it doesn't always meet the guidelines as they're written at the legislative level, and this is how DPI is guiding districts to put those forward. The only way that we can submit any waivers is that you have a public hearing, ask for comments, and then we'll submit them. Just because we're at this point, we would be asking for an opportunity that if any other items come forward, we would still have to have that public hearing, but then you would give me the authority to move forward and submit those. Last week, we did not have any individuals speak and provide any counter comments. These are very similar to some of the waivers that we saw at the end of the year. And I just wanted to check with Beth Linderholm. Did you receive any comments throughout the week? None? And Mr. Flaherty in the back, any comments? Because we live stream this and we have a chat room and there are no comments at this time either. So we're just now asking to be able to move forward and submit these as we need them.
Pat, comments, questions?
No.
Tanya?
Nope, we talked about this at the public hearing, so.
Steve?
No additional questions.
And Vicky?
No questions.
All right, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to delegate the Prescott School District Superintendent with the right to identify if a waiver or waivers should be submitted for programs during the 2021 academic year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. That concludes the business section. We're moving on to item I, information discussion. The first item there is update from the annual meeting.
Yes, why we kind of switch over, I guess I would just want to see if there were any reflections from the board with regards to the state of the state, with regards to the district, or the initial projected budget that'll be coming back to you next month.
I think he's asking for feedback. Does anybody have any feedback that they want to share from the annual meeting? Steve, you have any comments at the top of your head, or am I putting you on the spot?
I'll digress my comments to
All right.
next month.
Vicky, any comments from the annual meeting?
No comments.
Okay. Tanya?
Rick, if I remember, this year we're pretty stable with the funding sources. It's next year that we might see an impact from all this, from the pandemic and stuff. Is that correct?
That is correct. The one variable right now is last Friday was our third Friday count. It takes 2 weeks to kind of gather that, and Beth Linderholm will be submitting that for us. We also have summer school. This Friday, I'll be working with Tammy Murphy to go through our attendance for summer school. Those are what our membership is, and we are reimbursed by the number of students. I suspect, like many districts, some families chose either to go virtual through some K-12 programming, or they decided to homeschool. So I believe that our enrollment overall is going to be flat to slightly down, but it will, I 100% believe it'll rebound for next fall, because it's really a COVID issue rather than anything else. Obviously, you can see the new housing developments that are coming in, and they've broken ground and are starting to put the infrastructure. So right now, enrollment might be a little bit of a hiccup, but nothing that we can't absorb this year. And then next year, it's the new biennium, and we won't know that till the end of the spring session.
Thank you.
Pat? No? Yeah. Go ahead, Rick.
Maddie? You keep forgetting her. Any questions?
Yes. Yes. You weren't at the annual meeting, so
But you know what's great, Maddie? Is that the two guys behind that window, they're casting this and then record it. And all of our meetings now are available on our website. So if you go to the school board, you can see these.
And you can see yourself.
And so behind me is just the strategic direction. We talked about this at the State of the District last week. Obviously, the fiscal responsibility and investments, you heard a lot about some of the saving taxpayers' money. We also wanted to stress that we want to have safe environments for our students. There is the presentation by SDS that was provided, and there is a link, and that video is available to anybody in the world, but anybody in Prescott that might have more interest in it, it is available to you. In addition, there was information that was provided and why we were working with school perceptions. You might have heard that it's an 8-page survey that's informational and requiring questions, but it is geared to be a 5 to 7 minute survey. It will be paper pencil. You can request more or additional surveys if you want, and that information will be on the front page of the survey. And then finally, the survey, although it is paper and pencil, it has a self-addressed envelope, and it will go back directly to school perceptions, or you can click on the link and just answer the questions right on the website and not have to submit or send back the survey. So that is my reflection and recap.
All right, let's move on. Item 2, food service update.
Yes, I'm going to ask Tina to come forward. As you know, there are remarkable story throughout last year and also into June with regards to providing ongoing food for students that were 18 and under. There are some national programs that are available, but we want to share some of the work that Tina's done and also having to pivot as we worked with students that went hybrid to guarantee that they receive breakfast and lunch. So, Tina?
Yeah, thank you. So there's been a lot of questions because the USDA kind of put out something just really last minute here before school started. Late on August 31st, they extended all the waivers for free meals for everyone for those summer programs. And that's what we were running under last spring, summer, when this all hit. It really was a summer program, and now they've just extended where you can still run under that. Because it was, kind of a dropped ball at the last minute, we didn't want to jump into it. We wanted to learn more. And so we started our year under the contract that I had signed with DPI, which is the National School Lunch Program. And that is where, all the students are paying based on eligibility on their income that they've filled out applications for. So we started out the year, like I said, under the National School Lunch Program. We offered from day one meals for virtual learners. We started out with daily pickup at the high school. We were basically doing a to-go off of the line, so they had a hot meal that day. When we went to hybrid at the high school last week, we transitioned over to doing a weekly pickup similar to what we did last spring, where the food is basically refrigerated or frozen, and families are taking either a week at a time, or if they're a hybrid, they're getting the 3 days. So that's what we've been doing. I'm just kind of here to answer some questions about, why we're not on, taking advantage of those USDA free meals. Mainly, like I said, we didn't want to jump into it because it was not financially viable for us last year, and nobody likes losing money. So I guess I'm here to answer some questions.
Pat, do you have any questions?
I really don't at this time. No, I don't.
Tanya?
So what we did last summer, you're saying isn't viable to continue during hybrid and this next summer, or just this next summer?
Well, currently the program is only extended to December 31st, and or until funds are available. They said they could actually pull the plug at any time.
So we really are focusing on problem solving for after that December 31st and what to do to either provide.
Well, we've always run under the National School Lunch Program, and so we do get reimbursements for the qualified free and reduced, and we get slight reimbursement for even paid meals. So yeah, everybody would have to go back to the National School Lunch Program.
I don't really have any questions. I think it's awesome that we were able to provide, especially in the summertime and in March, April, when the sick family is really hard. So I'm just really proud of our district for going above and beyond and doing things like that for our community. So I heard really great things.
Steve?
I would say proud of the district, but proud of you too, Tina, and your staff. You're in the same boat as everybody in this district and everybody in the state and everybody in the country. Change is the only constant we've got right now. And your flexibility and ability to adapt and make some of these things happen for our families is, I don't know, I can't say enough about it. And I know you don't hear it enough from us because well, quite frankly, I don't ride buses with you anymore right now, so I don't see you very often, but, you know, just keep that up, and, you know, we'll support you as best we can, and we'll just see what the future brings.
Vicki?
I'm glad you know what's going on, because I was reading through this trying to figure it out. So yeah, that sounds like the best decision for us, because if you don't even know they've extended the program, but the program's gonna run out. And if it runs out of money, then you're out of luck. So I think, yeah, the decisions you're making are great. And yeah, like Steve said, if something comes up, and you know, we're here to support you, and yeah, this looks like it's a lot of work to keep running, so thank you.
And Tina, do you want to just mention the 3 other ways that sometimes we help out families in need, just to kind of remind them if they're struggling with being able to pay for the full price lunch or breakfast, what's available?
Well, anybody at any point during the school year can apply for free and reduced lunches. We absolutely encourage that. We also have, you know, the food pantry in town, and we have a backpack program, and all that information is, you know, on our website. And I just, you know, want to reiterate the fact that we definitely are providing meals for anybody that wants to order them. We're just, you know, doing it by their ability to pay type thing. You know, we haven't changed anything there, but anybody can sign up. We just charge their account online, you know, in our system. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maddie, do you have any questions on this one? No. I'm sorry, I haven't called on you all night. So, yeah, Tina, this is really good. It's tough. I mean, we want to be able to service everybody, but we also are trying to run a business here, and I appreciate all the work that you've done to last summer and over the spring during the virtual learning, just providing meals for everybody. Your staff and you have done a fantastic job throughout this whole thing, and it doesn't get recognized enough, but we as a board, you've heard it. We appreciate everything that you've done, and thank you for your service as well. Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you, Tina.
All right, item 3, reminder of the school perception survey.
Yep. And it really blends into the next piece, and so I put up the timeline again. Our goal is to have those in the mail kind of mid-October. They should be hitting all of the mailboxes in our community. Again, any household that within the zip code of the Prescott Public Schools will receive this paper copy. There will be information obviously on our website, and obviously in the newspapers, that if you need to get or access one, or for some reason it didn't get delivered, we'll make sure that you get a copy. On the 18th of November, the survey closes on November 2nd. But in a similar fashion, they will wait 5 days to make sure that anything that was mailed on the 2nd is still able to be counted into their information database. That allows them to kind of process and create the reports the week of November 9th. It does coincide with the 3rd Wednesday of November is when they would come and provide you with an analysis of the information that they've put together. That will be probably the big item with regards to the board meeting. Anytime you receive information that's pretty data rich, it can be overwhelming, and it takes time, I think, for it to sink in or to steep and allow you to kind of reflect and identify what the information is telling us. We obviously have some additional days in December and January for you to kind of decide what the community, how they align with their strategic direction and the conversation that you've had with them openly since over the last 18 months. The question we have in front of you, and we put a copy of the calendar that's color-coded for you. It has the month of October and November on the front and December and January on the back. I think the question we have for you is really in talking with school perceptions, historically, they present and then follow up with some type of work session. So we use work sessions to go deeper for the board to kind of be not distracted by a full buffet of items, but to kind of dig deeper in breadth with regards to the information. The question they had is obviously November 18th is the week before Thanksgiving. And also, I think it's our Hunter's opening. So one of the challenges we have is where and when might you want to schedule? And it also is kind of coming into the holiday season. With them trying to turn around the data, they don't have a lot of wiggle room. And so I think we were looking for whether or not you wanted to try to have either an extended work session prior to the 18th and then go right into the board meeting. We've done that previously once with SDS Architects, where they kind of walked you through the granular footprint of every building and all the reports, and then we came into the large board meeting. And School Perceptions is recommending historically that they meet with the board after their first formal presentation. So with the 18th maybe being your first formal, it would be trying to find dates that would work for you to have a work session. So you can, and I also know, I think Member Block had mentioned that November, December also you have some conflicts, so we wanted to make sure that you had either opportunity to look at the calendar and propose a date, or determine that you would come back next month and try to lock in a work session that fits your schedule.
And Rick, just to clarify, or maybe articulate deadline for a resolution, if we were to go to a referendum in April, would have to be January 26th. That's
that
the
is
deadline.
absolute deadline. Yep.
Approving a resolution.
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to open it up here. Steve, do you have any comments or questions at this point as far as moving forward for scheduling a work session? Anything that you want to share?
No, I'm fine with that. I like the work sessions, so we can get some work done.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask the question a little bit more differently. So our board meeting in November is when the November 18th is the regular board meeting, and we'll have a formal presentation to share the survey results. I guess my question to you guys is, should we meet before that in a work session that same day, or should we try to schedule something in December, January timeframe over the holiday break and try to figure out a date?
Rick just said they normally do that, meet with the board after, correct? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, so I think she was recommending, again, it's based on your interest. Historically, they do meet after the formal presentation, and that's what I was concerned about, is that Thanksgiving comes, so if you follow their direction, I would say something early in December to give you something between.
Like a work session in December after the.
Right. The only kind of what I was thinking as a pushback is if you really wanted to try to go deeper, you could try to have a work session, although it makes a long night, to have a work session prior to the actual meeting on the 18th.
Well, they're the experts, and if they're meeting, I guess it makes I like having the information ahead of time, don't get me wrong. I'm sure we could get it. Can we get the information ahead of time to look at?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, and we have the presentation, they explain everything, then maybe it makes sense to come back and do a work session and say, okay, now what do we do with this?
Right.
Sure.
So, I want to let the others chime in here too. Vicki, do you have any preference or opinion? Would you rather?
Well, their suggestion is that we do it after the formal presentation. That way, I think we're getting it at the same time then as everybody else is getting it. And I think that's a better way to do this, is that everybody, us and the community, gets it all at the same time. And then after, we can dive in deeper into work sessions and see where we land, see what we need I guess, to work on, where we're headed, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd much rather go with their suggestion of doing it after. And as far as time goes, picking a time to do it, I would have a really hard time combining it with a board meeting, only because of how my job is. So it's better if it's on a different day than a board meeting.
Okay. Pat?
I agree. I don't want to have a work session before the 18th. If there's some way to see the data though before that meeting, a day before, I would appreciate that. I agree with Steve on that. I think that we absolutely need to look at, probably that first week in December, the second week of December for a workshop option. Give ourselves the first week of January, being the week of the 4th, as another opportunity prior to when a resolution would be due. I think we should probably look at 2 different dates and save them right now.
Tanya?
Yeah, I'm open to anything at our August 11th public work session. We discussed meeting beforehand, and their concern was just having more time for the data. I know that we had said that we would prefer that, but if they recommend after, great. I don't want to meet on the 18th either. That sounds like all of us. And I do want to point out that even if we did meet ahead of time and we had a work session, it is public, and so the public would get the information at the same time as us in that situation as well. So just to be clear, those are still public and accessible to the whole community.
Mandy, you like more meetings? Any thoughts on this one? No. Okay. I agree with all you guys. I'd rather get the meeting. I'd rather get the information at the same time, or go through the information with survey perceptions our school perceptions at the same time that the public gets it, and then let's just try to lock in a date in December and maybe even one in January as workshop dates. So, can we just do this over a doodle calendar and not have to try to figure it out right now? I think that's probably the easiest, isn't it?
I like Pat's idea of coming up with 2 dates. I mean,
Yep.
I'm a little worried about time.
Or do you want to try to lock it in now? Rick,
No, I mean,
because we also need Sue's, so we need dates from Sue.
Yeah, we're working on that. I think if, it wouldn't hurt if, I think, we can send out a doodle. I think one of the challenges, obviously, is it just is another step for us to get it and then get it to Sue. I guess I would say if Wednesdays work best, just because that's part of your pattern. If not, I was just wondering if you wanted to kind of put a hold on the 2nd or 9th.
Yeah, we can try to see. Let's just take a look.
And if that works, and then I think, and then the 6th of January, and then we can work with Beth and Andrea to get a hold of school perceptions, and just kind of, the 2 of them can kind of know your calendar and theirs, and see if we can lock in a time.
I think Wednesdays probably are the safest bet for all of us to make work. So let's shoot for that and see if it works for school perceptions then. December 2nd or 9th, one of those 2. And then January 6th and 13th as other options if let Sue figure out what works for her. Okay.
Mike, I just want to note that in January that convention changes, so January you will have to consider potentially rescheduling January's meetings.
Yeah, the WASB convention's on that week of the 20th, right? Correct. Yep.
Is that happening still in person?
And just clarification, it will be virtual this year.
Yeah, so.
Yep. And it hasn't formally announced, but it's coming.
Okay.
That's what I was wondering.
I think they know.
So we could probably still hold our regular board meeting on the 20th then, in January?
Yeah, it depends on yes, it's the first night of the convention, so it depends on what you guys choose to do.
All right. Thank you for pointing that out though, Beth. Okay, I think we got enough. And I gotta get back to my. And that covered 3 and 4, so we are now on item J, recognition of visitors. Anybody in the audience that care to be recognized? Okay, we'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.